He had $3 billion, a Manhattan penthouse overlooking Central Park, and absolutely nothing that made him feel alive, until one March morning he came home 3 days earlier than planned, and found her, the housekeeper, simple, quiet, invisible, or at least she was supposed to be, because what started with a look turned into obsession, what should have stayed professional distance turned into forbidden desire, and what no one could ever know leaked into the most powerful elite of New York. Now, he has to choose: keep the empire he built, or burn it all down for a woman society says he never should have touched. This is the story of Kwame Ashford, the African billionaire who came home early and saw the housekeeper who changed everything, and what happened next no one was ready for. The return flight was scheduled for Friday. Kwame Ashford was supposed to be in Tokyo until Thursday night, finalizing the acquisition of a crypto startup, but at 3 a.m. on Wednesday, he canceled everything. No explanation to the team, no warning to the driver. He just boarded his private jet back to New York. At 5:40 in the morning, the city was still asleep under a lead-gray sky. Manhattan breathed out that sharp March cold that cuts through skin even inside $3,000 coats. Kwame rode up alone to the penthouse on the top floor of the Central Park South building, carrying nothing but a black carry-on and a weight in his chest he couldn't name. The key turned silently in the lock. Inside, the silence was absolute. Calicotta marble reflected the faint light beginning to seep in through the glass walls, the ones overlooking a still-sleeping Central Park, wrapped in fog. He dropped the bag by the entrance, slipped off his Italian shoes, and walked barefoot across the living room. The floor was icy. Perfect. Kwame stopped in front of the window, watching the city wake up. Skyscrapers like concrete and glass gravestones, the empire he had built. The Ashford name now meant power, influence, access, but it also meant loneliness wrapped in leather and brushed steel. He was about to head to the bedroom when he heard it, a low sound, rhythmic, coming from the kitchen, running water. Kwame frowned. The housekeeper only came Tuesdays and Thursdays, always after 10 in the morning. Today was Wednesday, and it wasn't even 6 yet. He moved silently down the wide hallway, past the dining room with its 12-seat table that never hosted anyone. The kitchen door was half open. Yellow light spilled into the hall. Then he saw her, from behind, hands submerged in the sink, washing a coffee cup. Dark gray uniform, plain, no label, curly hair pulled into a low bun, straight shoulders, the posture of someone who knows her place and knows it's small. She didn't know he was there. Kwame stood still, watching. He shouldn't have, but he did. The way she rinsed the cup carefully, like every movement mattered. The way she dried her hands on her apron before reaching for the dish towel. There was no rush, no carelessness. There was dignity. He swallowed hard. "Good morning," he said, his voice rougher than usual. She turned too fast. The cup almost slipped from her hand. Brown eyes widened, but she pulled herself together in a second, lowered her head slightly, respectful. "Mr. Ashford, I didn't know you were back." Her voice was low, controlled, but carried something he couldn't quite place. It wasn't fear. It was caution. "Change of plans," he said, stepping into the kitchen. "You always come in this early?" She hesitated, like the question was a trap. The agency asked me to come earlier this week. Full cleaning. You were traveling, so—" She let the sentence hang, like someone who knows too many explanations can be dangerous. Kwame nodded. He should have left, gone to the bedroom, taken a shower, slept, but his feet didn't move. "What's your name?" he asked. She blinked, surprised, like no one had ever asked her that before. "Simone, sir. Simone Rivera." "Simone," he repeated, testing the name in his mouth. He liked the sound of it. She lowered her eyes again, turned back to the sink like she needed something to do with her hands. "I'll make fresh coffee for you," she said, steady, professional. "You don't have to." "I do. It's my job." She said it without looking at him. And in that moment, Kwame realized Simone Rivera wasn't invisible because she wanted to be. She was invisible because she'd learned how. And for the first time in years, Kwame Ashford felt something that wasn't calculated, strategic, or safe. He felt curiosity. Simone knew that penthouse better than its owners ever did. She knew the third oak floorboard in the hallway creaked slightly. She knew the guest bathroom faucet dripped if it wasn't shut tight. She knew the living room AC made a low hum every Thursday, always at the same time. She knew the details rich people never need to know, because rich people pay others to know them instead. In the 3 months since she'd started working there, Simone had only seen Kwame Ashford 4 times, always passing through, always in a hurry. He never looked at her, never asked anything. She was part of the furniture, useful, discreet, replaceable, until that morning. Now, as she made the coffee, she felt the weight of his gaze. He was sitting at the kitchen table, something she'd never seen before. Men like Kwame Ashford didn't drink coffee in the kitchen. They drank it in their offices, on the phone, talking about 7-figure numbers, but there he was, tailored pants wrinkled from travel, white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, hair cut close, gray at the temples, tired eyes that seemed to carry the weight of decisions she'd never have to make. Simone placed the porcelain cup in front of him. Black coffee, no sugar. She knew. It was always written in the house log. "Thank you," he said, his voice still rough with exhaustion. She just nodded and turned back to her work. She had to clean the living room windows before 8, change the bathroom towels, water the terrace plants. Invisibility demanded efficiency. "Do you have children?" The question caught her off guard. Simone stopped, one hand still gripping the cleaning cloth. "I do, sir. 2. How old?" 9 and 6. He took a sip of coffee, thoughtful. Must be hard, this job, the hours. Simone hesitated. She didn't know if this was genuine conversation or just passing curiosity from someone who'd never worried about bus schedules. "It's what there is," she said simply. "No self-pity. And it pays the bills." Kwame looked at her then, really looked, like he was seeing her for the first time, and Simone felt something strange in her chest. It wasn't discomfort exactly. It was recognition. "You from the Bronx?" he asked. "Harlem," she corrected. Born in the Bronx. Live in Harlem now." He smiled slightly, a small smile, almost private. "I grew up in the Bronx. Prospect Avenue." Simone blinked, surprised. Prospect Avenue wasn't a billionaire address. It was a survivor's address. "My mother spent her whole life cleaning offices," he went on, his voice lower now. 3 jobs, 7 days a week. I used to go with her sometimes when there was no school. I'd sit in the hallway doing homework while she mopped floors." Simone said nothing, just tightened her grip on the cloth. "She died when I was 23, Kwame said, eyes fixed on the cup. "Stroke. Worked so hard her body just gave out." The silence in the kitchen was thick, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that happens when 2 people recognize the same pain without naming it. "I'm sorry," Simone murmured. Kwame lifted his eyes to her. "I built all of this for her. Every dollar, every win, but she never saw it." Simone swallowed. She wanted to say something. But what do you say to a man who has everything and, at the same time, nothing? "She saw you try," Simone said finally. "That already counts for a lot." Kwame looked at her like she'd just cracked a riddle he'd been carrying for years. And in that moment, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't explosive. It was subtle, like a thin crack in perfect marble, invisible from afar, but undeniable up close. Simone went back to work. Kwame finished his coffee in silence. But when she left the kitchen, he was still staring at the spot where she'd been, and for the first time in a long time, Kwame Ashford felt like someone had truly seen him. The weeks that followed were a quiet game of distance and closeness. Kwame started working from home more. Meetings that used to happen at his financial district office now happened in the penthouse living room. He told himself it was more productive, calmer. But the truth was different. He wanted to be near her. Simone kept doing her job with the same discretion as always. But now, when she passed his office door, their eyes met for half a second longer. When she served water during a video call, her fingers brushed the pitcher a beat later than necessary. Small gestures, invisible to anyone else. But between them, each one was a contained earthquake. One Tuesday afternoon, Kwame found her on the terrace. She was watering the plants, April sun lighting up her face. He'd stepped out to take a call, but hung up the moment he saw her. "You like plants?" he asked, leaning against the railing. Simone didn't startle this time, like she'd already expected him to show up. "I do," she replied, adjusting the hose. "My mother always had a garden. Small, on the apartment window. Tomatoes, basil, peppers. She said it was her piece of the Dominican Republic that no one could take away. Does she still live with you? She does. She watches my kids while I work. Kwame watched her hands, skilled and careful with the leaves. Have you ever thought about having your own business? Landscaping, something like that? Simone laughed, a short laugh, with no humor. Mr. Ashford, with all due respect, men like you make plans. Women like me survive. Those are different things. Kwame, he said. What? Call me Kwame. Not Mr. Ashford. She stopped watering, looked at him, brown eyes shining with something between challenge and fear. I can't do that. Why not? Because we don't live in the same world, and pretending we do is dangerous. Kwame took a step toward her, not too close, but close enough for her to feel his presence. What if I want to live in your world for a moment? Simone tightened her grip on the hose, water spilling onto the stone floor. You don't want to live in my world, she said, her voice firm but low. You want to feel human again. But when you get tired, you'll go back to your world, and I'll stay in mine, only now with the mark of someone I should never have let get close. The words cut deeper than Kwame expected, because she was right, and he hated that. You think I'm like the others? He asked, his voice tight. I think you're rich, Simone replied. And rich people always have a choice. We don't. She turned off the hose, coiled it carefully, and walked toward the door. But before going inside, she stopped, turned her head slightly, without looking directly at him. But thank you, she said, almost a whisper, for seeing me. Not everyone does. And then she went inside. Kwame stayed on the terrace, staring down at Central Park below. The trees swayed in the wind. The city buzzed, indifferent, and he realized, with frightening clarity, that Simone Rivera had done something no woman from the elite had managed to do in years. She had said no to him, and that only made him want her more. That night, Kwame couldn't sleep. He lay awake in the king-size bed, staring at the Venetian plaster ceiling, thinking about hands watering plants, about eyes that saw through masks, about a woman who knew exactly who he was and still wasn't impressed. Simone Rivera was dangerous, not because she was beautiful, she was, but because she was real. And Kwame Ashford had spent so long surrounded by fake people that he had forgotten how much reality burned. The first person to notice was Marcus, Kwame's personal assistant. 28 years old, Yale graduate, ambition sharp as a blade. He walked into the penthouse on a Thursday morning with 3 contracts to sign and found Kwame in the kitchen, drinking coffee, talking to the housekeeper. Marcus said nothing, just watched for 2 seconds before clearing his throat. Kwame turned, his face unreadable. Marcus, the contracts? On your desk, sir, Marcus replied, his eyes flicking briefly to Simone, who was already slipping quietly out of the kitchen. But Marcus's look carried something, curiosity, maybe judgment. Kwame felt it. The following week it was Vanessa Harding's turn, socialite, heiress to a Texas oil fortune, Kwame's ex-girlfriend. She showed up unannounced on a Tuesday afternoon, holding 2 tickets to a charity auction at MoMA. Darling, don't you answer your phone anymore? She said, walking into the living room like she still lived there. Kwame was on the sofa reviewing a financial report. Simone was vacuuming the next room. Vanessa, I didn't know you were coming, he said, standing up without much enthusiasm. That's exactly why I came, she smiled, kissing his cheek. You've been very reclusive. People are talking. What people? The ones who matter? She replied, sliding off her sunglasses. You skipped the Carmichael's dinner. You didn't show up at Senator Klein's book launch. Julian asked me if you're okay. Kwame sighed. I'm working, Vanessa. That's all. She looked at him with those calculating blue eyes that knew every angle of manipulation. Working, she repeated, dragging out the word. Or hiding? At that moment, Simone passed through the doorway, carrying a basket of laundry. Vanessa saw her, and something shifted on her face. A subtle expression, almost imperceptible, but it was there. Disdain. Did you change housekeepers? Vanessa asked, turning her eyes back to Kwame. The agency sent her, he replied shortly. Vanessa murmured. Interesting. She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. The seed of suspicion had been planted. The comments started quietly, at private dinners, in penthouse living rooms, in exclusive clubs where men in $5,000 suits drank 30-year-old whiskey. Kwame's different. He's been distant. I heard he's spending a lot of time at home. With whom? Manhattan high society was a rumor machine lubricated by champagne and envy. And Kwame Ashford, the Bronx kid who became a billionaire, had always been a fascinating target. On a Friday night, Kwame was pressured into attending a dinner at Edward Whitmore's house, a veteran investor and one of the most influential figures in New York's financial elite. The dining room was imposing. Crystal chandelier, Rothko paintings on the walls, a view of the East River, 12 guests, all part of the tightest inner circle of power. Kwame sat between Vanessa and a retired senator. The conversation flowed about politics, the stock market, trips to Europe, until Edward at the head of the table raised his wine glass. "Kwame, my friend," he said, smiling, "you've been avoiding us lately. Trouble in the empire." Polite laughter. Kwame forced a smile. "Just recalibrating priorities, Edward." "Priorities," Edward repeated, savoring the word. "Admirable. But be careful, my boy. Men like us can't afford to look distracted." The word landed like a stone in water. Distracted. Vanessa lightly touched Kwame's arm, a gesture that looked like affection, but was a warning. "He's fine, Edward," she said, smiling. "He just needs good company. I'm taking care of that." The looks around the table were sharp, evaluating. Kwame felt the trap closing. He was no longer just a rich man. He was property of the elite, and any deviation in behavior was watched, judged, corrected. When he returned to the penthouse that night, Simone was still there, organizing the pantry. He knew she should have left hours ago. "Why are you still here?" he asked, loosening his tie. "I had work backed up," she replied, without looking at him. Kwame leaned against the doorframe. "Simone," he began, then stopped. He didn't know what to say. She finally looked at him, and in that look there was understanding. "They know," she said simply. "Know what?" "Nothing's happened." "Not yet," she corrected. "But they feel it. And when rich people feel threatened, they destroy before they confirm." Kwame stepped forward. "I won't let anyone hurt you." Simone smiled, sad. "Mr. Ashford, you don't understand. It's not just me who'll get hurt. It's you too. I don't care. You should." The event was inevitable. The annual charity gala of the Ashford Foundation in the Plaza Hotel ballroom. 500 guests, press, cameras, the kind of night where Kwame Ashford had to be perfect. Vanessa would be his date. It was already decided, announced, expected. She had chosen a red Valentino dress, Cartier jewelry. She smiled at the cameras like she was already the future Mrs. Ashford. But Kwame could barely focus. Because that afternoon, hours before the event, something had happened. Simone arrived at the penthouse at 2 p.m., as always, but she was different. Red eyes, more slumped posture. Kwame found her in the laundry room, folding towels with trembling hands. "What happened?" he asked, his voice tight. She didn't answer right away, just kept folding. Then a tear slid silently down her face. Kwame stepped closer, gently touched her shoulder. "Simone, talk to me." She took a deep breath, wiped her face with the back of her hand. "My son, Matteo, he had an asthma attack last night. I had to take him to the hospital. They said he needs a new treatment, more expensive. Insurance doesn't cover it." Kwame felt his chest tighten. "How much?" "It's not your responsibility, Mr. Ashford." "How much?" he repeated, firm. Simone swallowed. $3,500 a month for 6 months. $21,000. For Kwame, it was the price of a watch. For Simone, it was impossible. "I'll pay," he said without hesitation. Simone stepped back, eyes wide. "No, I won't accept it." "Simone, I can't be in debt to you," she said, her voice breaking. "It's already hard enough being near you knowing that this can't happen. If I take money, I'll feel bought, and I'm not that. I will never be that." Kwame felt the words like a punch. "You think that's what this is about? Buying you? Isn't it?" She shot back, eyes shining with pain and anger. "You're rich, I'm poor. You have power, I have nothing. If I take anything from you, I become property, and when you get tired, I'll be discarded. I know this story. I saw it happen to my mother. It won't happen to me." The silence between them was thick, suffocating. Kwame stepped forward, slowly, eyes locked on hers. I'm not your mother's boss, he said, his voice low but steady. And you're not property. You're the only real person who's walked into my life in years, and I care about you. For real. Simone closed her eyes, tears spilling freely now. Don't say that, she whispered. Why? Because it makes everything harder. Kwame held her face in both hands, gentle, like she was made of glass. Simone, look at me. She opened her eyes, and there, in that wet, vulnerable look, Kwame saw everything that mattered. And then he kissed her. It wasn't calculated. It wasn't strategic. It was pure desperation. His mouth met hers with an urgency neither of them could control anymore. Simone froze for a second, and then she kissed him back. Her hands grabbed his shirt. The kiss was messy, soaked in tears, loaded with everything they'd been holding back for weeks. When they pulled apart, they were both breathless. That was a mistake, Simone whispered, but she didn't step away. I don't care, Kwame said, his forehead resting against hers. They stayed like that, holding each other in the middle of the laundry room of a multi-million-dollar penthouse, two worlds that were never supposed to touch, but now they were tangled together for good. At 8 that night, Kwame was in the Plaza Hotel ballroom, Tom Ford tux, Vanessa at his side, shining and calculating, 500 pairs of eyes waiting for him to be the man he'd always been. But while he smiled for the photographers, while he gave speeches about philanthropy, while he shook hands with senators and billionaires, Kwame could only think about one thing: Simone, and the kiss that changed everything. The decision came 3 days after the gala. Kwame woke up on a Sunday morning, stared at the Venetian plaster ceiling of the penthouse, and realized he couldn't breathe in that space anymore. He grabbed his phone and called Marcus.
"Cancel everything for next week," he said, voice firm. "Sir, we have the meeting with the Japanese investors on Tuesday and—" "Cancel everything, Marcus. I need time." Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, "May I ask why?" "No," Kwame said, and hung up. Simone wasn't expecting him when he knocked on her apartment door in Harlem. It was a 5-story building, faded facade, stairs that creaked. The hallway smelled like spices and disinfectant. When she opened the door, she froze.
Mr. Ashford, what are you doing here?" Behind her, 2 kids stared, curious. A 9-year-old boy with wide eyes, a 6-year-old girl clutching a worn stuffed animal. "I came to talk to you," Kwame said. "Can I come in?" Simone glanced back at the tiny apartment, a patched-up couch, a small TV, but clean, organized, dignified. She stepped aside and let him in. Simone's mother appeared from the kitchen, drying her hands on an apron. She looked at Kwame with immediate suspicion. "Mom, this is Mr. Ashford, my boss," Simone explained, her voice tense. Mrs. Rivera nodded, cold. "Kids, go to your room," she ordered. They obeyed without a word. Kwame stood in the middle of the living room, feeling the weight of 3 pairs of eyes on him. "I came to say something," he began, looking straight at Simone, "and I need you to listen until I'm done." Simone crossed her arms, defensive. "I built an empire because I thought power meant freedom," Kwame continued. "I thought if I had enough money, enough influence, I'd never feel small again, never be that Bronx kid who had nothing." He took a step toward her. "But I was wrong. The more I built, the more trapped I got. Trapped in dinners I hate, trapped in empty conversations, trapped in a life that feels like it belongs to someone else." Simone didn't move, but her eyes glistened. "Until you showed up," he said, his voice cracking slightly, "and reminded me who I was before I became Kwame Ashford, the billionaire. You made me feel human again, real again." "Mr. Ashford." "Kwame," he cut in. "My name is Kwame, and I didn't come here as your boss. I came as a man who's tired of living a lie." Simone's mother stepped closer, her voice sharp. "You think you can come into our home and play with my daughter's life? She has children. She has responsibilities. She's not some toy for a rich man to feel alive." "I know," Kwame replied, looking at Mrs. Rivera with respect. "And that's why I came to make a proposal. Not to Simone, to you too, and to your grandkids." He pulled an envelope from his pocket and placed it on the coffee table. $21,000 for Mateo's treatment. No strings, no debt. It's a gift. Simone took a step forward, eyes wide. "I already said I won't take—" "It's not for you," Kwame interrupted gently. "It's for your son, and a child shouldn't have to pay for adults' pride. Simone's mother stared at the envelope, then at Kwame, then at her daughter. "And what do you want in return?" she asked, distrustful. "Nothing," Kwame said. "I just want Simone to know she's not alone, and that I'm not giving up on her, even if she gives up on me." Simone covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. Kwame moved closer, slow, took her hands, pulling them away from her tear-soaked face. "I don't know how this ends," he said softly. "I don't know if we'll make it, but I know if I don't try, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Because you're not a distraction, Simone. You're the only real thing I have." Simone looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she let herself believe. "They're going to destroy you," she whispered. "Let them try," he replied, and then she did something she never imagined she would. She said yes. 6 months later, Kwame Ashford publicly announced his relationship with Simone Rivera. The elite reacted exactly as expected. Shock, judgment, exclusion. Vanessa gave interviews hinting at mental instability. Marcus resigned. 3 major investors pulled capital from the company. But Kwame didn't back down. He bought an apartment in Harlem, not a penthouse, a normal 3-bedroom place, where Simone's kids could run down the hallway. Mateo recovered completely. The little girl called him Uncle Kwame and corrected his drawings on the fridge. Kwame's fortune shrank by $200 million, but for the first time in years, he slept in peace, because the real scandal wasn't loving someone beneath the hierarchy. It was realizing that power without humanity isn't worth a damn, and that sometimes cracking the marble is the only way to feel alive.